Berlin, 1923. A true story. A whistle echoed through the factory, not to signal the end of the workday, but to pay the workers. At the time, many factories across Germany were paying wages twice a day. The moment workers received their money, they rushed out of the factory, not toward home. They ran to bakeries, grocery stores, anywhere that still had food on the shelves, not because they were hungry, but because they knew if they waited just a few more hours, the money they had just earned might no longer buy the same things. Not because bread had become more valuable, but because the currency was losing value so fast that every passing minute bought a little less. The strange part is, not a single banknote disappeared, but its value did. And if one day the same thing happened to your money, if you woke up tomorrow morning and no one accepted the cash in your wallet anymore, how would you buy food? It's hard to imagine. Something you've trusted your entire life, becoming completely worthless in just a matter of hours. Now imagine this. Tomorrow morning, you wake up like any other day. You stop by your favorite coffee shop. You order a cup of coffee. When it's time to pay, you hand the cashier a $100 bill. The cashier looks at it, then quietly slides it back across the counter. "I'm sorry, we can't accept this anymore." You pull out your bank card. You tap it. A message appears. Transaction declined. Not because you've run out of money, but because no one believes. That money still has value. In that moment, you realize something. The thing that disappeared wasn't the money. It was the certainty that as long as you had money, you could always buy what you needed. Do you remember this famous quote? What you cannot buy with money, you can buy with a lot of money. But if money could no longer buy food, then what would happen? This isn't just a thought experiment. History has already answered that question, not only in Germany, but in many other parts of the world. The money didn't disappear. The banks didn't disappear. The stores didn't disappear. The unbelievable part is that you're holding nothing more than a piece of paper with a serial number and the portrait of someone you've probably never heard of. Everything else stayed exactly the same. The banks were still open. People still went to work. Stores were still selling goods. The only thing that changed wasn't the paper. It was the minds of millions of people. If tomorrow no one accepted your money anymore, what would you do? The first answer would probably be gold. For thousands of years, gold has been the ultimate symbol of wealth. You can't print more of it. It doesn't rot, and you can't create it with the click of a button. It sounds like the perfect answer. But imagine this. You walk into a store. All you want is a loaf of bread. You place a gold coin on the counter. The shopkeeper looks at you, then asks a very simple question. How do I know it's real gold? And even if it is, how would they know what it's actually worth? And if that loaf of bread is worth only a tiny fraction of the coin, who gives you the rest back? Suddenly, nothing feels so simple anymore. Maybe you'll think of the U.S. dollar. After all, it's the world's most widely used currency. But what if the dollar itself is the money people no longer trust? At that point, it's still just a piece of paper. So maybe Bitcoin, a currency that doesn't belong to any government, one that no one can print whenever they want. It sounds convincing. But what if the baker doesn't accept Bitcoin? What if the power goes out? What if there's no internet? What if you're standing in a village with no phone signal? Bitcoin would still exist, but would it help you buy a loaf of bread right then? Maybe we should go back to the oldest system of all, barter. You have rice, I have bread. We trade. That's how people lived for thousands of years. But then, what if the baker doesn't need rice? What if they need medicine instead? And the pharmacist needs clothes. The clothing seller needs fuel. Within minutes, everything becomes incredibly complicated. Isn't that strange? Every solution sounds perfect until you actually have to use it. So maybe we've been asking the wrong question from the very beginning. Maybe the real question isn't, what kind of money should we use? Maybe it's, what makes anything become money in the first place? Long before the first banknotes ever existed, there was a time when people used salt, not to season food, but to pay workers. In fact, the English word salary is believed to come from the Latin word sal, meaning salt. In other parts of the world, tiny seashells were worth just as much as money. People used them to buy, to trade, even to store wealth. On the island of Yap, in the Pacific Ocean, people used massive stone discs. Some of them weighed several tons. The strange part is, they were almost never moved. Everyone simply agreed that the stone now belonged to someone else. And just like that, the transaction was complete. Then came gold. Beautiful, rare, durable. For thousands of years, it became the ultimate symbol of wealth. Then, paper money arrived. At first, the idea sounded completely absurd. How could a piece of paper ever replace gold? And yet, it did. Today, things are even stranger. Most of the money you own doesn't even exist as paper anymore. It's nothing more than numbers on a screen. One tap, one transaction, done. No gold, no cash, nothing physical. Changes hands. Now look back at everything we've just seen. Salt, seashells, giant stones, gold, paper, numbers in a bank account. They have almost nothing in common. And yet, at different points in history, people called every one of them money. Why? What is the one thing they've all had in common? Maybe the one thing all those forms of money have in common was never the object itself. Not salt, not seashells, not stone, not gold, and not the paper bills sitting in your wallet. Imagine this. You're the only person left on Earth. You have a house, a car, a vault filled with gold, and a suitcase containing $1 million in cash. Would you be rich? Or would all of it be completely meaningless? Because there would be no one left to trade with. No one left to sell you a loaf of bread. No one left to recognize that the things you own have any value at all. Which means value has never existed inside the object itself. It only exists when someone else is willing to accept it. That's why a piece of paper can buy you a meal. A number on a screen can buy you a car, and a small metal coin can represent hours of someone's hard work. Not because any of those things are special, but because millions of people agree that they have value. That's the moment money is truly created, not inside a printing press, not inside a vault of gold, but inside the human mind. Money isn't paper. It isn't gold. It isn't numbers on a screen. Money is a promise, a shared agreement, a belief held by millions of people every single day. And the frightening part is, if that belief ever disappears, the first thing to disappear won't be the money itself. It will be its value, and history has already shown us what happens next. Now imagine, you're a baker in Berlin. You open your shop at 8 o'clock in the morning. You put up a price tag. By 10, you have to change it. At noon, you change it again. By the afternoon, you no longer know what a loaf of bread should cost. If you charge too little, you won't have enough money to buy flour tomorrow. If you charge too much, no one can afford to buy it for the first time. The problem isn't making bread. It's figuring out what a loaf of bread is actually worth. 85 years later, Zimbabwe, a different country, a different time, but the ending was exactly the same. the central bank kept printing bigger and bigger banknotes. 1 million, 1 billion, 100 billion. Eventually, a $100 trillion banknote. It sounds like a fortune. But in reality, it was barely enough to buy a few everyday essentials. At one point, prices changed so quickly that shop owners stopped putting price tags on their products. Instead, they waited until customers reached the checkout, then decided how much each item would cost that day. Then came Venezuela. Years later, people worked for an entire month, and the moment they got paid, they rushed straight to the supermarket. Not to buy groceries for the month, but to buy anything they could immediately, because they knew if they waited until next week, the exact same amount of money might buy only half as much, or nothing at all. Many families stopped holding cash, not because they had too much money, but because holding on to money had become the riskiest choice they could make. They traded it for rice, for cooking oil, for medicine, for anything that could hold its value longer than cash. 3 countries, 3 different moments in history, 3 different cultures. None of them believed it could happen to them. And yet, they all reached the same moment. The moment a banknote stopped being money and became nothing more than a printed piece of paper. Not because the paper changed, not because the ink changed, but because the only thing that had ever given it value was gone. Trust. Think about that. Throughout this entire video, we've been asking one question. Why does paper money have value? Maybe that was never the right question. Maybe the real question is, what happens when one day no one believes in it anymore? Over the past few years, central banks around the world have been buying gold at a pace we haven't seen since the collapse of the Bretton Woods system. In 2024 alone, they bought more than 1090 tons of gold. In 2025, they added another 863 tons, nearly twice the annual average, seen between 2010 and 2021. The strange part is, the biggest buyers aren't investors, they're governments. Poland raised its gold reserves to around 550 tons in 2025, after purchasing another 102 tons, more than any other country that year. China quietly increased its official gold reserves to more than 2300 tons. Even with gold trading at record highs, China's central bank kept buying. Turkey continues to hold one of the world's largest official gold reserves, around 644 tons, built through years of steady accumulation. India has slowed its pace of buying, but it still holds one of the largest gold reserves in the world. And gold now makes up a growing share of its foreign exchange reserves. What's even more interesting isn't who is buying, it's who they are. These aren't hedge funds. They're not billionaires. They're central banks, the very institutions that issue money, that manage monetary policy, and understand the global financial system better than almost anyone else. So why are the people who can create money choosing to accumulate an asset that can't be printed? No one has said they're preparing for inflation. No one has claimed they see another financial crisis coming. But their actions raise an interesting question. Are they simply diversifying their reserves? Or are they preparing for a world where confidence in paper money may not be as certain as it once was? No one knows for sure, but history has shown that whenever central banks begin accumulating gold on this scale, the world is usually entering a period of uncertainty. Every day, we hand over money and buy the things we need. It feels so ordinary that we rarely stop to think how fragile the entire system really is. History can't tell us when the next crisis will arrive, and it certainly can't tell us whether another wave of inflation is coming. But it does remind us of one thing: no currency has ever held its value forever.